Hello again everyone, Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment I'm going to be dissertating and talking about part 2 of my natal horoscope. First thing I want to get on is I have a preponderance of planets and cardinal signs, which indicates I may start a lot of projects and have certain enterprise and initiative, but maybe even start a number of things simultaneously, but not necessarily always finish them. There is a constant need for some kind of activity. I could be impatient from time to time. I think I have, I think looking at it, having certain fixity in my horoscope, the fixed T-square, and having, some fixed energy with the Taurus rising, Aquarius midheaven, etc. I think I have a little more, I guess you could say, as far as follow through on things in the person that has a typical plethora of cardinal signs in their horoscope, though. Next thing, I have a majority of my planets in water signs, which could show acute sensitivity, emphasis on emotions. At times I may have, maybe I have difficulty detaching myself from others and things. Many actions that I may do might be based on instinct or intuitive hunches. And at the same time can make me very insightful. Another interesting thing in my horoscope is that my North Node is intercepted, and this could indicate possibly overwhelming adversity that is difficult to overcome. Could mean that my direction, in life, might be somewhat obscure or cloudy, and especially considering the sign it's in is in Pisces, you can understand why, I might be somewhat nebulous or ambivalent, in certain, at least at some point in life regarding direction. And I would say, in certain degrees between the Saturn and my 12th house and having the North Node intercepted, at least from a perspective, my own, I felt like, maybe the trials and tribulations I endured might have been greater than a lot of others, and perhaps they were. I was homeless for 4 years, from 2006 to 2010, and I was also homeless for part of 1994, and obviously, those things can be very adverse, to say the least. The next thing I want to talk about, my part of fortune conjuncts my second house, cusp in Gemini, and this could indicate that, writing, communication can play an integral role in my financial fortunes. I'm not making any money on it, but I do write for Homeless Paper, and I'm the sports writer for that paper. I get compensated in free papers. I don't get any money for it, but the second house is still can be connected, with work, besides just, the income generated. So, I can understand this seems to be very, very voracious, in this, as far as this placement, this aspect goes. And it shows these abilities may be fortuitous, whether, for as far as, income generated, which is not necessarily the case here, but it is fortuitous in terms of my, as far as the work that I do. I would say that, this is, even though I'm not affluent, this has played, my writing and speaking abilities have been, have played a role in my fortunes, I guess you could say, although not monetarily speaking, of course. Now here's something that's very intriguing. My part of death, as you know, it's an Arabic part, is conjunct my Neptune in the 7th house of relationships. And looking at it in a real fatalistic or literal sense, it shows that it could, indicate that I'm susceptible to, some kind of death, maybe connected with some kind of chemicals, maybe from some relationship or what have you. Now, I don't think anybody's going to give me any lethal dose of arsenic or anything like that in a relationship, but in the more, I guess you could say, pragmatic or practical sense, this could indicate maybe termination or death of relationships. And, the Neptune, obviously can be you know, the relationship itself could be, quote unquote, the death of me, figuratively speaking. Maybe it could be detrimental on some level, uh, you know, or maybe it could indicate, a partner that might, be alcoholic or have, some kind of drug, recreational drug affliction or something, and it could be, hazardous to me as a person. I don't really, but I don't really see this in the fatalistic sense that, I'm going to, be killed, by this. But I think it's more when you look at a part of death in a person's chart, basically, the sign and house placement, a lot of that just pertains to the ending of something connected with that house or sign. My part of death is in Scorpio. Maybe eventually I'll stop doing the astrology. I really hope it doesn't mean that, but we know that, Scorpio is connected with astrology and occult matters, and so it does make me, wonder, is that, maybe I don't plan on ending it anytime soon, if ever, I plan on doing this for a while, so it's just interesting to see what comes with me in the future, and that, that part of death thing, because that is kind of interesting, the fact that it conjuncts, Neptune, and it's in the 7th house, and it's in the sign Scorpio, so it doesn't, when we look at that on the surface, it obviously doesn't sound very auspicious for me. But, anyway, my final signature is in Cancer. And this could indicate that I'm, strongly enamored with novelty, emotional, sensitive, can be nurturing and sympathetic, a strong inclination to be introverted, to be the homebody, and somebody that just likes to, basically, be at home. The thing I wanted to touch up on in this is that not only do I have 3 planets in Cancer, as I mentioned before, I have the final signature in Cancer. I have my chart ruler in the 4th house. There's a strong Cancerian influence in my chart. What's interesting to note is that Cancer is the sign of life-giving. And, the fact is I haven't had any children at all in my life, biological or otherwise. And, I'm in my 2nd half, I guess you could say, of my life. So it's a pretty long time I've lived and not have any children. Could it be possible that there's influences in my chart that are suppressing this need for the, for the children? I do have my moon in Gemini in my 1st house of personality. There's certain things, I have Taurus rising, have other influences in my chart. Moon in Gemini, maybe it's attributed to the moon in Gemini not wanting to be tied down. I also have a lot more degrees in my 1st house in Gemini than I do Cancer. Is the Taurus rising maybe, playing a role or stifling this Cancer energy as well? Someone had put a comment on one of my videos and said I needed to emphasize the North Node and my Sun sign more than my rising sign. Well, based on certain things in my life, is there such a thing as overemphasizing the rising sign or even the moon sign? In my opinion, I think people can actually, exhibit, might exhibit more characteristics of their moon sign as opposed to someone else having that sun in that same sign. For example, my moon being in Gemini, if the person, it's possible, I believe, that I could actually have more Gemini characteristics than a lot of people that have their sun in Gemini, especially if their rising sign is in a completely different sign. And the sun, I think, being in the bottom part of my chart between the 1st and 6th houses, it's in the 2nd house actually, conjunct the 3rd. This may play a role as well. So my theory on this is if the sun sign is in the bottom half of the chart, meaning between the 1st and 6th house, that it's not really expressed maybe as strongly as it would be as if it were, at the top half of the chart, between the 7th and 12th houses. Another thing I just wanted to talk about, I have half of my planets are on the left side of my chart, half are on the right, which means I can, maybe vacillate between independence and, I guess you could say, being dependent, on others, self-reliant in between that, and looking to others for assistance. Maybe it also indicates I know when I need to be independent, and I'm not proud to ask for help when needed. And one last thing I wanted to touch up on is I have a mutual reception with my Moon in Gemini and Mercury in Cancer. Now, a lot of people think that when you have, this kind of, placement, that the signs would act if they were really in each other's, rulership. Like, in other words, it's almost like having the Moon in Cancer and Mercury in Gemini. But I think, the pragmatic or practical way of looking at this is that, in modern astrology, is that these energies would blend well together. So, for example, Mercury in Cancer can be one that can extemporize or speak, kind of, off the bat, well, and Moon in Gemini can be, intelligent and articulate, and it could indicate that I have, I'm the type of person that can give, in conversation, give a lot of quick, witty, intelligent responses to what people will say to me, as an example. But anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment for my natal chart, Edwin Learnard Natal Chart, Part 2. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be continuing my House Ruler series. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis on a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because a person astrologically is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.